Conversation Hub. Today I am joined by Kenna, who is our social media and marketing person at Cultural Experts Consortium. And we were having a great chat yesterday, and I said, I think this would be a great conversation for you to come in on, Kenna. So for the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about neurodiversity and neurodiversity and leadership. At the end, we will, if you've got any questions, we'll leave a few minutes. We probably won't answer them as we go through. It's always a slight lag on LinkedIn Live, and it just makes it feel a bit discombobulated when we do that. But I think, Kenna, if you just want to say hello and introduce yourself very quickly. I know I said you're marketing guru, but anything that you think you'd like to share?
So I'm kind of the person behind sort of the social media and emails that go out. And like you say, we were having a chat yesterday about being neurodiverse, and I was diagnosed with ADHD 2 years ago. And I've always found that workplaces are a bit of a struggle with regards to managing, for me, other people's expectations of me. So it really sort of resonates that it needs to be spoken about, because it isn't a one size fits all. Even though that's usually how we're brought up, that we just sort of need to fit into these environments, which usually means that it becomes to our detriment in the end.
Yeah, thanks, Kenna. And I think that word fitting in really resonates with me. So what is fitting in? Fitting in to me is complete opposite to belonging. And belonging is something I'm madly passionate about, is being able to bring our true selves to work. And part of that is having great psychological safety, which we'll talk about later, I think. We'll come on to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I spent a huge amount of my time trying to fit in to the norm, and actually realised after a while that I just wasn't bringing my best self. So it's not just about neurodiversity, it's about all of us. How do we bring our best selves every time we go to work? I'd like to really just start talking about what is the difference, because we use lots of words interchangeably. Neurodiversity is everyone. It's neurotypical and neurodiversity all together. So it's everybody. We're all neuro diverse, so both neurodivergent and neurotypical. And neurotypical is what we consider the norm. And I am using that, the norm. Neurodivergent is we have a different map in our brains. So if you think about our brains as supercomputers, we don't all follow the same map to get to the end point. And it was coined by a psychologist, sociologist, Judy Singer, in the 1990s. But I think really over the last probably 10, 15 years, it's been spoken about a little bit more. So neurotypical and neurodiverse, and Deloitte, when they did a recent survey, said actually 10 to 20% of people are neurodivergent. But I don't know how true that is, because I think we're still late to the game. Kenna's just said 2 years ago she was diagnosed. I realised last year I have a huge amount of ADHD traits. I didn't realise that everybody didn't have 100 tabs in their brain open all the time.
That blows my mind. That blows my mind.
Yeah. What do you mean you haven't got 100 tabs?
I know everyone's different, but when people can sit and watch TV shows, and I'm like, huh? I don't even turn the TV on, because that's too much downtime for me, and I'm just constantly on the go doing something.
Yeah. And I think...
And that's why office space does not work for me.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 toilet breaks taken.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it was really interesting, actually, Kenna. We had a discussion yesterday about some of the really good things within the office, deadlines. that you've had to be very creative with. And now you've got your own business. So I'd love you to talk to me through that, because it's a really interesting one.
So I think in recent years, I've started to understand exactly how I work, which is very different. So leadership roles that I've sort of been either under or part of, it's their sort of expectations, and I know how I work. So I was saying to you yesterday, if I'm speaking to a client, I know if they say to me, if you can do this for me, and then, but no rush, do it when you're ready. No, I can't do that. So I'll throw myself under the bus and say, I'll do it by Friday. And they'll go, no, honestly, there's no rush. And I'm like, no, I'll do it by Friday, because I need that deadline. Otherwise, that is just, it's not on one of the current tabs.
Yeah.
It's just going to get lost in the noise, and you're going to come back to me in 3 weeks' time and say, have you done that thing? And I will then be filled with dread because I've forgotten about it. So I have to set myself a deadline in order to get the things that need doing done.
Yeah. So, I think what you're talking about really is that really good bit of self-awareness, because you now understand how your brain works.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, if you don't, and you're at work and you're really struggling, we know minorities, of which neurodiversity is a minority in the workplace, spend a huge amount of time worrying about how they fit in.
Yeah, through in education into the workplace, it's much of a muchness. It doesn't sort of change. You don't feel like that you fit in with everyone else. So that's where the masking comes in. You try and be like everyone else. And then I think as I've got older, I've just sort of let it go. I used to sit, if I needed to get work done, I'd put these big headphones on, and they'd think I was rude. I was just being Kenna. But it was my way of isolating myself to do what I needed to do, because in an office environment, say I can't listen to all the chatter. I can't. It's just too distracting. Like I say, there's 100 tabs on, and then there's 100 more around me. I have to, and even to this day, 9 times out of 10, I'm walking around with AirPods in. They're not even on. They're not playing anything, but they are just a way of focusing.
Yeah. And I think, it's one of the reasons we wanted to have this is to have this conversation, because I still think there is a certain amount of fear within organizations about having these conversations from both sides. From the leader, what if I say something wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And from the person, what if I'm stigmatized because I've got something different?
I would never walk into an interview and tell them that I have ADHD and potentially autism. I just wouldn't, because I would think, well, I'm not going to get the job then, because there's something wrong with me. But what that actually means is I am going to, this role is going to become my special interest, and I am going to need to know absolutely everything about it, and I will be one of your top performers, because it matters to me. And when things matter to me, they really matter. And I used to have it all the time. I would be the one that I remember everything. I am very visual. So visually, I would then remember everything, and then I've got it. And then I would be the one that did 2 days worth of work in one day, and that was fine. I'd basically work out a little process for myself, and I could just fly. And management loved it, because I would always be like the top performer. Those targets, I was hitting them. And then new people would join, and then they'd give me new people. That would be my downfall, because I can't teach someone the way that I learn, because not everyone learns like me. And then I get frustrated that they haven't learned the way that I've learned. So, but like I say, at that initial, I would never tell you that I'm ADHD or autistic.
And I think that's really interesting, Kenna, because we're talking about stigma and bias, right? Actually, you've got a bias against yourself.
Absolutely.
And, these are one of the things that we really need to break down in the workplace, because we know diverse thinking brings innovation and it brings greater productivity. And if people and research bores that out. This is not me just going, oh, well, it's great. Diverse thinking is great for innovation, great for moving on. And what we need to do is focus on the strengths of people. So, one of the conversations we had yesterday was around, it's a different way of thinking. It is not broken. So if I go to play a Sega game on a PlayStation, it is not going to work. Not because it's broken, but because it has a different operating system.
That's exactly it. I loved that yesterday when you were like, it's just different. It's not broken.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I am different. I'm not broken. I might look a bit rude from time to time, but I'm working. Like, I'm just different.
Yeah. And, diverse leadership styles, recognizing, humans do not come with user manuals. Wouldn't it be great if we did? This is how I get the best out of Kenna. This is what she needs from me. And actually, this comes round to these, how do we make changes within the workplace to suit different people? Rigid workplace structures actually sometimes unintentionally exclude people. And it's not about, it is about us thinking bigger. So what does this person need to turn up and really be their best? And these changes tend to be really small.
Yeah, they are really small. And I think sometimes, depending on your leadership style, from my own experience, is management egos play a part, because you are deemed to be just trying to be different. You want something different to what everybody else has. And if, the famous saying, if I do this for you, I've got to do it for everyone. And it's simply not the case. I used to be, when I was in employment, I had my first child. I went down to 3 days. Monday and Tuesdays, I wasn't in the office. I wasn't at work, but I had my emails on. And I was responding to stuff on Monday and Tuesdays, and people started to realize that they could contact me on those days. I wasn't obligated to do that, but they'd accommodated me after my first child. So I didn't mind. I didn't feel like I was going above and beyond or anything like that. I genuinely didn't mind. And then the more that they tried to sort of push me into, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I do think it was leadership egos that was running that made me think, well, I'm taking a step back now. I'm turning my emails off. Don't contact me on Monday and Tuesday. I'm not here. My out of office is on. You're all getting my out of office, but I'm replying anyway because I care. And then I start to not care because I think, well, you don't really care about me. So I'm just going to take my foot off this now. So they were getting more than what I was sort of contracted or obligated to do, because they'd accommodated.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting, this feeling valued, feeling heard. I very recently did a training course on presentation skills, actually, and I had someone who was neurodivergent. And I always ask for feedback, and the best bit of feedback I got was I felt heard and seen. And that's so important for everybody. Everyone, not if you're neurodivergent, neurotypical, minority, whatever you want to label a person. Let's see everyone as individual and everyone at what strengths they bring. We are not fixing people. We are leveraging strengths as leaders. And for me, that's the biggest part of the leader. Really understand your team. Understand what they need from you to bring their best self and their strengths to work. And you talk really, Kenzie, about engagement then, Kenna. So actually, when you felt really engaged, and being engaged is you value what the organisation does and you feel valued.
Yep.
You brought your absolute best self because you felt listened to, you felt heard, you were accommodated. As soon as you didn't feel valued, there's a downward slope, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And that's where people will be, organizations will realize that's when people start looking for new jobs.
Yeah.
And it's so expensive to replace people, especially good people as well. And, you know, you've taken on an equal share of the workload, or if not more, and then they're gone and they're not being replaced, and then you're in a struggle, everyone else, then there's a huge knock-on effect. And I also think, so for instance, like the GC index also helps highlight where people are different. So where I worked, we had a different similar sort of thing, not as I would say not as in depth, but you could say, oh, Kenna's the way she is because she's red.
Yeah.
And whilst that means nothing to anybody else, it meant that within the team, people understood that I wasn't being rude. I wasn't just being Kenna. It was because that we'd already sort of mapped out our whole team and we all knew where we sat. So we knew that it was just, it's not personal. I think that was the other thing. It's not feeling like it's personal.
Yeah.
And I would feel like if somebody, as a classic overthinker, if someone said something to me and then I found out what colour they were, I was like, that's why.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's really interesting that I think just, you know, that we talked about self-awareness at the beginning, right? Again, you've just talked to me absolutely about self-awareness and awareness of others. So actually, what impact am I having? This emotional intelligent part, what impact, how well do I know myself? And how do other people view me? And actually, it's a fine balance between those two things, that self-awareness. So how do I view myself? And it, you know, going back to that, really interesting, you actually have a bias against yourself, probably from experience.
Yeah.
And it's probably a conscious bias rather than an unconscious bias.
Yeah.
And actually, how do I know? And you've talked to me, actually, I know sometimes I have that impact on people because, you know, I'm doing that. And I think, you know, one of the things when you said, actually, I wouldn't disclose it, so interesting, because I think it's very different when you're going into an organization because you don't actually know the culture.
Yeah.
But when you're in an organization, if you are in a psychologically safe organization, you should be able to reveal your true self. And when I talk about psychological safety, I mean rewarded vulnerability. So actually, I feel comfortable to say I've got ADHD and nobody is going to judge me.
I think one of the things that would it would make me think is the famous phrase of, oh, well, we're all a bit autistic, aren't we?
We're all on the spectrum.
Everyone's got ADHD these days. And I just think, sod off is a nicer way of putting it. Because it's just, you know, I can talk to people and I'll say, like for my husband, for example, I'll say to him, what are you thinking? And he's like, nothing. Sorry? Nothing. No. Like, what are you thinking? Nothing. Huh? And he'll say to me, like, what are you thinking? And I'm thinking about dinner. I'm thinking about the drive that I'm about to do. I'm thinking about mowing the grass. I'm thinking about I need to fold that washing. I'm also thinking about what happened in year 7. Like, it's constant. And he's just like, nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all right. You've got all the tabs open for him, Kenna. Don't worry.
It's the family tabs.
Yeah. And, you know, I think for leaders, and for people in organizations is recognizing that differences bring better outcomes as well. So one of the phrases I hate most of all is treat everyone as you want to be treated. Oh my God, no. Oh, can us tab open?
Sorry.
No. So, you know, treat everyone as you want to be treated yourself. Absolutely not.
No.
Kenna is not me, and I'm not Kenna. The intention is great. The intention is great. And, you know, it is there for the right reason. But actually changing that thought to let's understand people more and what they're bringing to the game. And I think, you know, I talk a lot in the ED and I space, but I always add that extra bit on, which is belonging. So actually, diversity is a fact. We are all different. We all have different operating systems. And regardless of whether Kenna and I both had ADHD, we are not the same person.
No.
It's just like very clearly. Kenna's a perfectionist. I'm not.
I need isolation. I need complete isolation. Whereas my husband finds it torturous. He's like, it's too quiet.
Yeah.
So if one size fits all, where do we sit?
Yeah. And it doesn't. We know that. We know that one size doesn't fit all. But actually, as a leader, truly getting to know the person and the whole person. And this comes back to the trust equation, which we talk about a lot. Trust is equal to credibility plus reliability plus intimacy. Your credibility is, I can do this job. I've got the qualifications, or I've got the experience. Reliability is, if I say I'm going to do it, I do it. But your intimacy is the hardest bit to get to, is really, truly understanding someone. What motivates them? Do I know them on a personal level? How do I actually speak to them? How do I put processes in place that work for them? So, you know, something, autism, quite often actually just changing the way you write your emails will help someone who is autistic understand a little bit more. At the top of the email, this is the outcome that I want from this email. Then go into the details. This is just for information. There is no action required. By the end of this email, I want you to come back in weeks' time with 4 ideas. Make it very clear right at the beginning.
You ought to see the way I write an email.
Yeah.
It goes straight, open the email, straight in. What do I want? And then I go, hope you're well. Oh, 2. And then I write 2. And then I'm like, many thanks, Kenna. Because I can't, I'm like, douche. This is what I want. And the closer you are to me, you're not even getting how you're doing. You're probably not even getting a name.
Yeah.
Because I need information, and that's why I'm reaching out. So can you give me none of the fluff? And again, comes across as rude. And it's definitely not intended to be rude. It is just, it's what's needed.
Yeah. And you know what? There's some great leaders out there who are very now openly talking about their how neurodivergent they are. You know, Richard Branson, founder of he's very out there talking about his dyslexia. Actually, one of his strengths, and you see this in dyslexic people, is because they have to be creative because they're not reading and writing as quickly. So he's become, he's very openly said he became a much better delegator and visionary because he had to be creative. He's massively advocates for inclusive education and hiring. And you see that in the people that he has. You see it in the Virgin brand. There is a real sense of come as who you are.
Yeah. But 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where was that? He was there. He wasn't shouting about it. And it is taking a lot of people to shout about it for people to kind of be like, okay, we need to start listening.
Yeah, we need to continue to talk about it. It's different, not broken. It's not something to fix.
Yeah.
Chris Packham, the UK naturalist broadcaster, he has talked about being autistic. I think, when you look at how autism was in the media, so Rain Man is my first experience of what I thought autistic was.
Yeah,
that's absolutely my first experience. So that's where our biases come from. But Chris Packham's really outspoken advocate for autism, and he's talked a lot about his documented experience. So for leaders, I would suggest go and get lots and lots of information, and then stay curious.
Yeah, because we're fascinating beings.
Yeah, it's fascinating how our brains work. I'm just constantly fascinated by how our brains work. Yeah. What's your thought on, how do you think leaders could become better at dealing with neurodiversity within workplaces, Kenna?
I think it's asking those questions with empathy, because a lot of the things that I need or do, I have no reason for. And I say I have no reason for because I don't understand it myself. It's like my old, I've got time to do this task. Just do it. But I can't. And I can't tell you why, because I don't know why. Because in my head, I'm going, just do it. But my mind's blank. And I think just being a little kinder in those situations, and just holding space for people to feel at ease, to say, I struggle with this bit. I'm really good at this bit, but I struggle. And I think anyone in any organization struggles to say, I struggle. And then I think I just hope that people, leaders especially, realize the value that people bring and just bear with, because once we're probably trying to figure it out ourselves, and once we've figured it out, you'll have the result. We just need to figure it out. Yeah. And the more that we talk about things, the easier it becomes to figure it out, to be honest.
Absolutely. Yeah. I thank you for your input. I'm really conscious that we're going to the last 2 minutes. So I'd just like to wrap this up by absolutely, it is difference, not broken, focusing on strengths, staying curious, asking those questions, recognizing we are all different, and diversity brings better team outcomes. Foster psychological safety within your workspace. If anyone is curious about how we can support you and raise awareness within your organization, please just let us know. You can go on to CultureWorks Consortium and email us, and we can come back to you. But I really appreciate you stopping by and listening. And thank you, Kenna, for joining me today.
You're welcome. I will just say as well, there is the gift link, the GC Index gift link that's available. And I personally think if you have neurodivergence in your team, that the GC Index is going to bring that out, and it would make it a lot easier. Also for the people that don't want to be asked those questions and labelled, again, it helps bring all of those out, the strengths of people within your team, and just helps leaders understand who they've got and where and who fits where.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good morning. Bye.
Bye.